All right, so we're going to talk about how the Mongol Empire declined, if you want to call it that, and kind of what happened to them, what was their fate. And you guys just took some guesses as far as what you think might have happened here with the decline of the Mongol Empire. So here we go. All right, lots of red here. There's not that many slides. There's only 2 slides, but there's lots of notes, so I'll give you a minute here. All right, so while you finish up here, I know we always kind of, one of the things we try to stress is that in this class, one of the things that I try to stress is that history is often not binary, meaning the cause or effect of something is not this or that. It's almost always this and that, right? So it's important that we use and instead of or. Or is kind of a binary thing, black or white, up or down, right? But in this particular case, and I think in most cases that we study, it's really a whole bunch of things kind of working together to create a circumstance, right? So I think the decline of the Mongol Empire is no different. We're not going to point to any one particular reason for its decline. There's a lot of things that are kind of working in conjunction with each other to create these conditions that bring about the end of the empire. Number one is the plague. Someone guessed disease. Here you go, bingo, right? So we know the plague originated in Asia. We know that the Mongol Empire, is concentrated in Asia, at least at its start. And we also know that, and well, I'm not sure if we've learned this yet or we learn it in today's wrap-up video, but one of the things that the Mongols do is they kind of solidify the trading routes all throughout Asia. Right? Before the Mongols took over, trade across Asia was complicated because you had to pass through territories that were governed by several different governments. And that made it tricky, right? So when the Mongols take over everything, they govern the entire land that the Silk Road kind of covers, and this streamlines the trading process. We know the plague is kind of communicated via those trade routes. So the more fluid and streamlined the trade becomes, the more efficient the spread of the disease, right? So the plague is certainly something that had a great effect on the Mongol Empire, the same as it did for the people of Europe. Second factor is assimilation. Now, this is something that we've seen in the past. It's a group of people that kind of get absorbed by a larger group as a result of intermarriage and kind of cultural, kind of forcing, other cultures upon them to the point where their cultural identity is kind of compromised. And this is probably, something else that happened to the Mongol Empire. If you look at the picture on the slide, this picture is in relation to the Native American, but those two pictures are the same person. Okay. The picture on the left is obviously that person in their kind of traditional native attire and look that is representative of their traditional culture. And the picture on the right is that same person after they've kind of undergone this process of assimilation, where they are kind of transformed to fit the culture that they are living in. So this is probably something that happened to a lot of Mongols also, especially after they kind of settled down in China. We said that they're greatly outnumbered by the Chinese. So, if there's 10 Chinese people for every one Mongol, it's hard to maintain that distinct cultural identity of the Mongols when they're surrounded by so many people that are not Mongol. So that's probably a factor also. And last but not least, we mentioned this in the document the other day when we looked at the primary source for Kublai Khan. He did use inclusive governing strategies, right? So conquered people were allowed to participate in the government that kind of ruled over them. And that's an attractive look for a lot of people. And, it's something that made Mongolian conquest kind of palatable to the people that were ultimately conquered. However, that document also did mention that the highest ranks of government and the highest positions in government were reserved strictly for Mongols. So even though there's inclusion, there's still this kind of we'll use a modern term, kind of this glass ceiling that exists for conquered people to rise through the ranks of government. They could only get so high. This probably, had negative kind of effects on those conquered people, and a lot of those conquered groups probably fought back to a certain extent and started to rebel. So this is really, there's probably other factors other than this also, right? But these are kind of the big three that all kind of work together to bring about the end of the Mongol Empire as a distinct group unto itself, kind of unique. All right, I'll give you a second. All right, so I mean, like I said, this is like, I wouldn't even call this like a full blown unit. It's really just kind of a mini unit, like this particular topic. But right here on this slide is basically all the important things that you need to know about this topic. Okay. Number one, the Mongols started off as nomads. That's kind of unique because all these other sophisticated, quote unquote, civilizations at the time are really stationary. They establish permanent cities and have all the other six characteristics of civilization. The Mongols, at least in their earliest stages, are not. They are nomadic people, and that's unique. They expand through expert horsemanship, including the use of the stirrup, and superior military tactics. They establish a humongous amount of land as their empire, everything from the Sea of Japan all the way to Central Europe. So gigantic. We've put that map up before. You could see that in previous notes presentations. Finally, they settle down in China and establish the Yuan dynasty. They overthrow the existing Chinese dynasty. I want to say the Song dynasty, and establish the Yuan dynasty. And they maintain that control through inclusive governing strategies, sort of, right? We went over that. That allows conquered people to kind of participate in their government. So, and then finally, the decline, which is what we talked about today, probably due to plague, assimilation, and peasant uprisings. So these are kind of really the big takeaways and all the things that we need to know about this topic boiled down into one nice, neat picture on one slide.